The Sony A7RVI is here, and Sony made a whole lot of changes with this camera that we're going to be taking a look at a real-world portrait photo shoot. I'm going to be testing image quality, autofocus, rolling shutter, overheating, IBIS, video, you name it. And no, we still don't have open gate. Maybe one day. This video is not sponsored, I'm not getting paid, and I don't keep the gear. Let's get into it. Does this camera beat the flagship A1 II? And did Sony get this release wrong? Because one of the biggest changes is the A7RVI has a brand new 66.8 megapixel fully stacked sensor, and just like the A1 II, can shoot 30 FPS blackout free. This camera is very exciting. So is there a catch? Let's find out. First, a new sensor means we need to have a good look at image quality. I'm sharing 100% crops of the unedited straight out of camera JPEGs, and afterwards the photos edited with my Meadow Lightroom preset pack, which I'll leave linked down below for you. Make sure you're watching this video in 4K so you can see all the details. And I'll get back, I'll crop like just below your skirt. That's really nice. Since this is a pre-release camera, I don't have access to the RAWs just yet to take a look at the increased 16 stops of dynamic range, but we do have plenty of other details we can dive into already. I decided to do this photo shoot on my trusty 35mm f1.4 GM and the 85 f1.4 GM2, since that's one of the latest prime releases from Sony and can handle being used on a higher resolution sensor. Whoa, the sun's out. That looks so magical. The images this camera produces are on par with what you're used to seeing from Sony. Zooming in, you can see plenty of texture and detail, and the colors look great too. Since I only have JPEGs to work with, I do have particular settings for them. I'm using manual white balance, dynamic range optimizer set to 3, which gives me a flatter image to work with in post and makes it easier to edit, and I have sharpness set to 2. Straight out of the box it's set to 4, which I find is too strong. By the way, I'm also working on an A7R5 vs 6 comparison, so let me know if you have any questions you want answered there as well. Having a stacked sensor means you, in theory, should be able to use the electronic shutter, since a stacked sensor improves readout speeds, and I did test the readout speeds, which we'll get to in a moment. While we're out here shooting, I am going to be switching between the electronic and mechanical shutter. With the electronic shutter, we have all the same upgrades we recently saw in the A7 V. So the A7R6 includes blackout-free 30 frames per second shooting, pre-capture, and speed burst shooting. With a mechanical shutter, you can shoot up to 10 FPS. I tested out the buffer and limitations of this, as I was curious how much you could shoot at these high burst frame rates with such a high resolution sensor. At 10 FPS in mechanical shutter, you can shoot 140 lossless compressed RAWs, around 220 compressed HQ RAWs, or about 635 compressed RAWs before hitting the buffer, where it'll drop down to 6 FPS or less. So that's pretty good performance there, considering the resolution of this sensor. However, at 30 FPS with the electronic shutter, you'll only get 70 lossless RAWs, which is about 2 seconds of shooting, or up to 163 RAWs in compressed. Then it significantly slows down to 1 to 2 FPS. Even the breeze is working for us. It's like just the right amount. One of the improvements here is that you are keeping the full 14-bit RAW files in lossless compression, regardless of your shooting speed or shutter choice. The A7R6 has half a stop more of IBIS than the A7R5 for those of you who shoot with slower shutter speeds. Obviously, that's not me. In terms of autofocus, we have all the same settings as you can find in the A7 V, A1 II, and A9 III now. This includes human, animal, insect, vehicle, and auto subject recognition modes. I tested out autofocus in 2 separate modes. First, with the transition speed set to fast to see how quickly focus jumps around. Look, for people, Sony's autofocus has been fantastic for a hot minute now. So more importantly, my second test is with autofocus set to locked on. In this mode, focus should stay on the intended subject, which in this case is me, and should not jump to anything else in the frame, even as they cover the subject for a moment. We really gave it our best go, and it does such a good job at staying sticky. It would lose focus when Dan would linger on me for a longer while, which I think is pretty reasonable. Ooh, I wasn't expecting this location to be this good. With stills during the photo shoot, autofocus was reliable for the majority of the shoot. I had a strong number of usable images that are consistent with what you would expect from a high-end Sony camera, especially with the full body and mid-length compositions. When it came time to capture close-up headshots though, I did notice some eyelash and even eyebrow focusing. I am using all the same autofocus and camera settings I normally do, and as you know, I'm a heavy Sony user, so this performance did seem a little out of the ordinary for me. Out of focus images are also much much more noticeable on a high resolution sensor, so that's something to keep in mind. But I've included a consecutive sequence of headshots to show you what I experienced.
And do you want to try one if you kind of like, maybe you could hug yourself almost?
What's new in the build of this camera? Well, it has a new grip, which is slightly larger to make room for Sony's new battery, the SA100. It has a bit more capacity and is higher voltage. New battery means new charger and new vertical grip for the A7R6. So going forward, the question will be if Sony will add this battery to all new releases, or will some cameras use this battery and others still use the older FZ100. This camera weighs 714 grams and has a new EVF. While it still looks like the previous 10 megapixel EVF, it now supports HDR and, more importantly, it can go brighter. I did have to use the EVF quite a bit since the sun was so blinding, and yes, it's quite nice to look through. It has the same flip and tilt screen, which is great. No updates to the screen itself though, which is something I'd love to see from Sony soon. So a screen that's sharper, clearer, and brighter to make it a better experience to use. The A7R6 has all the same buttons as the A7R5 except for this new small button up top that lights up some of the buttons on the camera, which is pretty cool. If you don't need it, you can actually use it as a custom button like always. In terms of ports, they've replaced the micro USB with a second USB-C port, and it still has dual card slots. Sony are still not offering OpenGate or RAW recording, which I think would have been really fitting for the A7R series, but what it does do is 8K 30p in 422 10-bit and 4K 120p full frame, and this is matched with the A1 II now. As you can see, 8K 30p still has a minor crop. Here it's a 1.2 times crop.
So I'm starting off at 4K 25p because we're going to test out video as well, and this is in log. Wow, this is actually such a pretty spot.
4K 30 and 60p are full frame, and 4K 120 has the choice between full frame or a 1.1 times crop.
I find doing video is so awkward because like it's so silent. Like photo, even if I'm not saying stuff the whole time, at least it's clicking.
I have plenty of video samples for you to have a look at in all those main video options. I'm filming all these shots of Xanthi in S-Log3 and grading it with my custom Rec 709 Premiere Pro conversion preset, which I'll leave linked down below for you, and all the autofocus tests you watched earlier are in standard picture profile. Remember angle of priority, which was released with the A7 V? Well, it's back again. This time it's only switched off out of the box for 4K 120p, which gives you that 1.1 times crop, and you do have the option to turn it on for complete full frame. I don't notice much of a difference in noise, so I would just turn this off most of the time personally to be able to get the full frame shot. There's a new dual gain option up to ISO 3200. Here you can definitely see less noise when you turn it on, however, this is at the expense of readout speed. Speaking of readout speeds, I did some testing and there is a significant improvement over its predecessor. The A7R5 in 8K has a readout of 37.5 milliseconds compared to the A7R6 in 8K with a much improved 13.7. In 4K 25 and 50p, it's 7.3 milliseconds, and 4K 100p with angle of priority off is 5.7, while with it on is 6.2. As I mentioned, having dual gain on slows the readout from 7.3 to 15.8. In photo, the electronic shutter has a readout of about 19.6 milliseconds, which is a huge improvement over the A7R5's 100 milliseconds. For photo, this is still a standard readout speed, which means it may cause issues with faster moving subjects and artificial lighting. As a comparison, the Sony A1 II and Nikon Z8, which both also have fully stacked sensors, are under 4 milliseconds. As you can see, in bright light with a slower moving subject, there is no difference between shutters, as all my images looked great. Now, what about overheating? In about 32 Celsius, 90 Fahrenheit ambient temperature, on the A7R6 in 4K 25p, I was able to record up to 52 minutes compared to the A7R5's 49 minutes. So there's not a lot of difference there, but this could be in part due to the faster readout. The heat pop-up comes up on average 3 minutes before it shuts down from overheating, so it doesn't give you a whole lot of warning. In 4K 50p, I was able to record up to 42 minutes, and in 8K 25p, 29 minutes before it overheated. For some comparisons, in 4K 50p, the Canon R5 II reached 28 minutes, the Lumix S1R2 reached 32 minutes, and the Sony A7R5 reached 30 minutes. During the photo shoot, I noticed the camera was very hot in my hands from early on in the shoot. We're in autumn now in Australia, so it was around 25 degrees out on location in the sun. After shooting some video on and off for about 20 minutes, followed by 3 sets of 70 burst photos, a heat warning popped up on my screen. So it does seem like you'll need to be cautious if you usually work in a warm climate or direct sun for long recordings. Here are all the crop factors of stabilization and what they look like in action. Surprisingly, standard IBIS almost looks like it's completely switched off. It's super shaky. Active IBIS is my favorite as it looks the smoothest while not cropping in too much, whereas dynamic active is also super smooth, but you do lose a fair amount of your frame to the crop factor.
Let's test out audio. So far, you've been listening to my lav mic.
Now let's switch over to the internal microphone of the A7R6. This is with wind noise reduction switched off and noise cut switched off. Next up, we have the internal audio, but this time with wind noise reduction switched on. There isn't much of a breeze today, but there are crickets happening and also a lot of traffic noise as well. Now we have wind noise reduction switched off and noise cut switched on. So again, we'll see if my voice changes at all and see if you can hear the crickets and the traffic noise. Last but not least, we have both of them switched on. So something new you can do with the A7R6, which I don't have to try unfortunately, you can record 32-bit float audio with the external XLR adapter, which connects via the hot shoe. I also have photo examples at all the ISOs for you to take a look at with noise reduction off and set to normal, and these are all with the mechanical shutter. In video with S-Log3, native ISOs are 800 and 5000, and for standard picture profile, it's 100 and 640. Should you go for the A12 or the A7R6? That's a question a lot of people are going to be asking now because the A7R6 has some really big updates that make it look like it's right on par with the flagship A12, but there are some things you need to consider. While there is a 16 megapixel difference in sensor size, they are both high resolution cameras at 50 and 67 megapixels, but for some photographers, that gap will really matter, especially if you rely heavily on cropping or you do large-scale printing. Something else to consider is the sensor and what they were each designed for. The A12's fully stacked sensor prioritizes speed and minimal rolling shutter with about a 3.7 millisecond readout. While the A7R6 has improved readout speeds and is fast for its resolution, it more so prioritizes image quality and dynamic range rather than straight up shooting speed. So while the electronic shutter will be more usable now, I would still consider this a mechanical shutter camera. So no, I don't think Sony made a mistake releasing this A7R6 with these specs, as it won't replace the speed of the A12. This is a really strong update to the A7R series though, which should be very exciting for high resolution photographers and videographers. Let me know what you think of it in the comments, and thanks so much for watching. Bye!